The following is intended only for mature audience. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to the Smoke Free Radio Network.
That was interesting.
I would turn around and tell you that earlier tonight was funnier than hell when I launched Vaping in the Mic, and I didn't even know. I was so upset that I didn't even know that there were technical difficulties that were running amok in what was happening. And when I was switching between screens, evidently the audio absolutely went to hell. I didn't know it. And people, to the people that tried to get in touch with me to let me know, especially Bill Tarling, and a couple other people, thank you for trying to reach out and let me know. I did not have a good point of time right then and there, but I couldn't just let this stuff go. So I turned around. It took a few hours, ironed out what I hope ironed out, got things put back together the way that they should be, maybe sorta, who knows. And I think when we switch screens now, we should be able to go ahead and say it works okay. And so I'm going to do that just for a second. I'm going to switch this screen over, and I'm hoping that people can still hear it. And if I saw a couple people in there, thank you for joining me again. If you could, I'm going to switch back so that I can see what's really going on. Give me a thumbs up if it actually worked, if you would, please. I see Jerry Reed, Gren Flazier, Mindy Kirby, a couple other people. But if you could hear it when it switched screens, were you able to catch that? Or did it absolutely fall into the abyss all over again? I'm hoping. All right, there's a thumbs up. Hopefully then we can proceed with this evening. And maybe, just maybe, I can make it through all of this without losing my cool. I'll tell you what, when I got done earlier, and I cut the show short because I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was going on and why it was having problems, I had such a thundering headache that it wasn't even funny. The first thing that I want to talk about, everybody and their mother were all battling Tobacco 21. And it is a serious thing in every state because it does. I've heard from different stores that it would wipe out like 30% of their income to their store because there are that many younger people that are switching from smoking and going to a safer alternative. And I have heard it's going to drive numbers up for the FDA. It's going to cause all kinds of problems. But the biggest one is that it's taking choice away from an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 20-year-old. And the reason that I say that that is important, and everybody, you will hear it time and time again, everybody says, at 18 years old, you can join the military and go off to war and possibly get shot or die for your country. At 18. At 18 years old, you can purchase a home and go into debt. You can sign for credit cards. You can sign for a college fee and go into debt to pay for college at 18. But all of the states and the government want to tell you that you can't have a safer choice and an alternative to smoking. They want to tell you that it's 21. Now, in looking at this, there are already, and this was just the other day, there were already 9 states that have passed a T21 all the way across. They're Arkansas, California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Oregon, Hawaii, Maine, Utah, and Virginia. But guess what? Maryland just approved the age to 21, the T21. They passed it statewide. Now that makes 10. In talking with Lindsey Stroud, Washington State is going to fall right behind it. That's going to make 11. Now I know New York, Ohio, Texas, all of them are eyeing a T21. And this is becoming worse. This is one of the things that we fight the hardest for, because it's actually taking away the rights of younger people. But here's where my entire rant started earlier this evening. And it just went downhill from there. There's this nice joker called a Republican, of all things, a Republican lawmaker, Robert Aderholt, this week is going to introduce a T21 bill to Congress. He wants to blanket the entire United States in T21. And it says the bill would mandate a uniform age of purchase for tobacco products across all states and territories. Folks, this guy wants to take the rights away of I don't know how many people in one blanket fell swoop. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that at all. And I know that there are a ton of people that would not be. So this is just to bring this to your attention, that this guy up in the Congress wants to pass it. But here's another thing. Aderholt cited data from the FDA about all this other garbage. So he's cherry-picking data from the FDA to be able to pass his legislation or to introduce his legislation. And we know for a fact that the FDA, just in the last couple of days, has become... They went over the cliff. That's the only way that I can put it, so that I don't take my blood pressure and go all the way back through the roof. They have gone over the cliff, hands down. Here's something to think about, and I'm not going to be switching screens back and forth just in case, because I don't want to run into another problem. But check this out. Gottlieb, to where it says his name in a statement, a press release. In January, Gottlieb had 9 statements that he put out. In February, Gottlieb had 15 statements that he put out. Okay? In March, he had 16 statements. And in April, just 4 days, in April, he has already had 8 statements that he's put out through a press release. Now, he's walking out the door at the end of the day tomorrow, and he's done. He's going home, he's not coming back, and he is throwing as much material at the wall to see whatever will stick is going to stick. And this is why I put on the earlier part of the show. I said, look, the FDA has turned into a war machine against the vapor industry. And they are doing it through fear-mongering, and they are doing it through all kinds of poor ways. We're going to get into some of their fear-mongering here in just a minute. Here is the first part. that I want to talk to you about. And this one, it raised my blood pressure earlier so bad it wasn't even funny. So we'll keep our cool about this and we'll talk about it. This came out April 1st, and it was no joke at all. The FDA wants to have advanced treatment strategies for helping youth addicted nicotine. Advanced treatment strategies. Now, we know when the FDA says treatment, they're talking drugs, medication, something that Big Pharma is going to supply. They're not talking just talk therapy here, folks. They're talking about big pharmaceuticals creating yet another drug to put on the market to treat an epidemic that they claim, which has no factual basis. If people have been reading the news over the course of the last week or two, you have seen the FDA claiming epidemic, and ironically, the CDC came out with numbers that turned around and said, we don't know where you guys are getting your information from. We don't agree with you. The Center for Disease Control is telling the FDA, we don't agree. This is not true. And I'm like, okay, so you know this is what's going on. Now, going back to this statement, this press release about the teen epidemic rising. There's a couple of somethings, all right, that have just absolutely floored me about this. And this was one of the first ones. And I'll read it to you. And for those that are going to be listening to a podcast earlier, since I absolutely destroyed the last show, and I erased it, because that's not something that I want to have in public. I lost my cool way too much. Here's what he said. We've heard too many painful stories from parents of teenagers, pediatricians, and young people themselves, and they reinforce what we already know. For many young e-cigarette users, addiction has already taken hold. There's two things with this statement. Okay? We've heard too many painful stories. FDA, do you have any facts to back up what you have heard? I would like to see those. Okay? I would like to see in print and who said what. We've heard these stories. And then you go through that little piece of snippet that he said. They reinforce what we already know. Now, because the FDA is supposed to be a scientific body, what studies and proof do they have so they know addiction has already taken hold? I would like to see those studies also. I'm going to sit here until they come around and give me those studies. Well, guess what? Chances are I would be dead, gone, buried, and the world would have even forgotten about me completely before I saw anything come from the FDA. And you know that that's going to be true. We've heard from different people. And I can't fathom how people can stomach that. And this is something that the FDA is saying, okay, you know, they're going to do something about it. Well, here comes my next question. In all of this, you go back to March 21st, 2018. The FDA put out the regulation of flavors in tobacco products. They did what's called an ANPRM, Advanced Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. And I know that everybody remembers that because it created absolute havoc. Absolute havoc. But in this ANPRM, if we scroll down here just a little ways, and this is public record, folks, over here where it says public comments, there are 23,115 documented comments on this ANPRM. Brings up my next question. How can the FDA say that they have heard stories they've heard from. No documentation that they're showing. They've heard stories of. Here's the part that really grabbed me. In this ANPRM, those 23,115 comments, of which they deleted anything that looked like spam, that looked like a fill-in-the-form letter, okay? Because at one point in time, we know that there was over like 60-some thousand different comments, and they whittled it all the way down to 20. Here's the thing. They classified all of those comments as anecdotes. And because they're anecdotes, they can't be used in any scientific kind of fashion, and the FDA would not consider them. So we back up to what the press piece had to say. We've heard too many painful stories. Here again, what classifies too many? How many is too many? And before some joker comes along and says, well, anything more than one about a teenager is too many. Okay, there's 23,114 other comments on the ANPRM. Do we get to consider those now? How many is too many? I couldn't fathom this earlier, and I know that I went off hard. Oh, Paul, there is no doubt the FDA is lying. Because they right here, they've proven that they have such a problem that it's not even funny. On one hand, 23,000 comments are called an anecdote. And when it fits their narrative, then the stories that they've heard, no documentation, no nothing, well, those we have to pay attention to. We really have to pay attention to those. So which one is it, FDA? Are you going to consider these from teens and pediatricians and what the hell else did they say? Teenagers, pediatricians, parents of teenagers, young people themselves. Well, I guess all those then need to be treated the same way the comments were, and they're all anecdotes. They're all just stories. You can't use them. There's no factual basis on doing anything about that. In this particular piece that he had put out, they go through continuing to call this whole thing an epidemic. They continue their fear-mongering, and they continue all of the other stuff that they have been doing now for so long that it's not even funny. It has gone way, way beyond any capability to have credibility. Scott Gottlieb has turned around. He's leaving, folks. He gives a rat's ass about anything that's going to happen after tomorrow, and probably even after today. His job is done. He's going home. In press releases beforehand, he's already a wealthy man from whatever he did. He does not care. All he's doing now is setting a roadmap for the FDA and whoever takes over to continue doing what he was doing to begin with. This is a strategy that has been mapped out from day one, and they are continuing to march forward. If we stop and take a look, really, at all the things that have happened, we go back to when the deeming rules, the deeming regulations were put into place. And we had to do GCC paperwork, and we had to do child-proof kind of capabilities. And all of the steps that the people that are taking the time to follow all of the guidelines and trying to play by the rules, we have had to hop through hoop after hoop after hoop. And we all know that coming up is the HPHC testing. Now, that's been put off until next year. But still, even at that point, HPHC testing, there's still, even if you went and got it done today, there's still not enough lab space out there to handle all of the testing that needs done. It has become a shit show. Plain and simple across the board. It has become really terrible. Even across the pond. And this comes in from Planet of the Vapes over in the UK. Even he is turning around and saying Scott Gottlieb is spending his remaining hours as commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration launching a new volley of lies and smears at tobacco harm reduction. Ain't that the truth? Now I know, and you would need to go. You can find this either at Planet of the Vapes, or if you go through Vape Distortion, you can look at this. Greg Conley came back, and there's 2, 3, 4 different paragraphs that Greg Conley came back. And this is going along and talking more about what we're going to talk about next. The seizures kind of thing. But this has become horrible. Absolutely horrible in what it's doing. And there's no way for me to even try to get around saying differently. Everybody that has been watching the FDA, everybody that has been paying attention, everybody that has been following. In the last 30 days, the FDA amped up everything that it's doing to do what? To railroad the vapor industry out of existence. I should not have closed out that T21. The minute that the representative from Congress said he was going to put the T21 in, guess who was automatically in support? Juul and Altria. Big time. I listened to a rant that Dimitri did the other day, and it was a fantastic rant. I was going to play it again, but I just, my blood pressure couldn't handle that right now. But he turned around. Juul had been wanting to raise the age to 21 to try to save their ass from the FDA. That's the only reason. And then they wanted to ban flavors. And the only reason that they want to ban flavors, they want to take it back to tobacco, mint, and menthol. Well, that's what cigarettes are sold on the market, tobacco, mint, and menthol. And we all know that if we take flavors out, most of the vape shops are probably going to close down, and most of the vapors are going to go back to smoking. It's scientific fact. Dr. Farsalinos showed that. Dimitri has talked about it. I can't tell you how many times. But the next one that hit right behind his rant was that Juul and Altria were for taxation. And they were trying to push in Tennessee, and I'm sure that they're trying to push it in other places as well, they were trying to push a per mil tax. Until Dimitri stood up and told the people down there, look, a per mil tax on a Juul pod is going to equate to 4 cents of tax. Meanwhile, the 60 ml bottle is going to have a $3 tax. So it does nothing except cost more and shut down more shops. Meanwhile, the actual problem, Juul, gets away scot-free with only 4 cents on their product. So he did something absolutely brilliant, and many people have spoken about it before. A per milligram of nicotine tax. Now, and just like what he said in his rant, I am the same way. I am not in favor of any taxation for any harm reduction product, period. So the people that are going to rant and rave and be upset, I don't approve of any tax on something that is a harm reduction item. But if you're going to put a tax on it, place the tax on the per milligram. Because that little tiny Juul pod at 50 milligram kind of wakes you up a little bit versus the other 60 ml bottle. I would say fair is fair, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Before I get to the next part of what I really want to talk about, we're going to stop and we're going to take a break for our sponsors, because without our sponsors, Smoke Free Radio could not do what it does. We'll be right back.
Hey now, this is Dimitri with Smoke Free Radio reminding you to please show some love to our wonderful sponsors. Without them, there would be no Smoke Free Radio, and they are as follows. All the way from Florida, Moon Mountain Vapor, with locations in Florida, and their liquid available for wholesale and retail, moonmountainvapor.com. Some of the best custards and tobaccos on the market from the Brickwills Vaping Company. The lovely Shell with a vapor bar, locations in Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. And of course online at thevaporbar.com. And who says you can't have award-winning e-liquid without cartoon characters? That's exactly what you're going to get at theplumeroom.com. And finally, of course, the Vaping Advocate magazine that has generously provided the telephone lines for you to communicate with us. Thank you for your support. And finally, for you, the listener, don't forget to check out the coupons and codes page on Smoke Free Radio. Pick up some e-liquid and save some money. From all of us here at Smoke Free Radio, thank you for your continued support.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to Vaping and the Mic with Mike Peterson.
See, even now, it is still giving me some fits across everything. I had so many problems earlier, it wasn't even funny. And yet, I apologize to the people that were trying to listen to the broadcast earlier. It was a complete shit show. There's no doubt about it. I felt really bad about it. And here again, I didn't want to just leave this stuff out there and not talk about it, because the next part helps understand what the FDA is really doing. When I said war machine, this is wholeheartedly true. 100% true. Here's what they came out with yesterday. And this is what has driven so much of the industry up in flames. And I don't blame them. I'm one of them. The huge upset. The FDA's ongoing scientific investigation of potential safety issue related to seizures reported following e-cigarette use. Yeah. Now they're trying to say young people or minors might have seizures after using e-cigarettes. But let's continue on down through their absolutely wonderful piece of documentation. Because I'm going to show you something that they did not bother to say in their headline-grabbing bullshit. They submitted the agency into Poison Control Centers has identified a total of 35 reported cases of seizures following use of e-cigarettes between 2010 and 2019. Yeah, 35 cases in 9 years. And they're coming out with this kind of honest-to-God bullshit headline. Now, as I mentioned earlier, 35 cases. I don't want to see anybody having a seizure. I am against any youth, underage person using any tobacco product, period. None. They shouldn't be doing it. They have laws in place that should be taking care of that, but there's no enforcement of those laws. Imagine, just for a minute, just for a moment, that if they had enforced those laws in all these years and made sure that underage people didn't use tobacco products, we wouldn't be having this conversation about 35 kids having seizures over 9 years. So, FDA, regulatory bodies, it's on you, folks. It's on you. You did not enforce the law. Period. But there's another part. This one should really, again, take a look at this headline. FDA Scott Gottlieb, Principal Deputy Commissioner Amy Abernathy, FDA's ongoing scientific investigation, seizures, and you know that every news outlet picked up on this, and they're talking about e-cigarettes and seizures. You know, hands down, Fox News, CNN, all the crappy shit, the local stations, the national stations, all of them are talking about seizures and e-cigarettes. But in their paper, and I've got to scroll down because I need to find where this is at. Right here, underneath this. And I'll read again. I'll read this verbatim so that people on a podcast can hear exactly what the FDA printed. We want to be clear that we don't yet know if there's a direct relationship between the use of e-cigarettes and the risk of seizure. We can't yet say for certain that e-cigarettes are causing these seizures. Doesn't it strike anybody besides me as inflammatory to have this headline-grabbing e-cigarette seizures in big print, big, bold effing print? And you have to scroll down through this to find we don't know and we can't say for certain. Where does the FDA stop in their fear-mongering? Is it all of this other stuff that hasn't been working? Really? Now you have to run around and create more of a fear-based narrative? Why? Oh, right. Big tobacco and big pharma. Because they're losing money. So are all the states. They're losing money because of taxation and MSA. It's all, you want to follow the money trail? It will lead you from state to state to state to state to the FDA, to big tobacco, and to big pharma. It's one big connect the dots line. A ton of people know it. There are some documents that could prove that. I wish I had them. But here's one other thing, and again, bear with me while I scroll down through here, because there's a part of this that I really want to know. They actually want people to call in and report additional cases of seizure-related activity if their kids vaped. I shit you not. It's in this paper, and I've got such a headache that I couldn't even put my glasses on and read straight. We're asking that any unexpected health or product issues experienced with e-cigarettes, so here it is, right here. We're asking that any unexpected health or product issues experienced with e-cigarettes or any tobacco product be reported to the FDA through our safety reporting portal. So they can't even make a case for themselves on 35 cases over 9 years. They're now asking the public to call in and, Give them more stories. Not scientific proof, not actual factual data. It's anecdote. Stories. Where's the science behind it? They want to turn around and continue. They believe, and it's in this paper, they believe that the 35 cases are enough to warrant them to really look into this. Okay? That's what they're trying to say. Here, I did find it. We believe that 35 cases warrant scientific investigation into whether there is, in fact, a connection. And what they're saying is a connection between e-cigarettes and seizures. 35. I want you to keep that number in mind, 35. Because now we're going to come over here and I'm going to show you something else. Now, you could sit, and I did earlier, and I blew my top. We could talk about the opioid crisis and how many death statistics there are. Because, oh wait, yeah, that's right. The FDA went ahead and they approved something called oxycodone. And it became one of the biggest crisis-causing things. But it's FDA approved. Don't forget that. It's FDA approved medication. Why aren't they doing something about that? Why isn't the FDA cracked down on that? I'll tell you why. Because Big Pharma turned around and they came out with something called Noxolone. It's that wonderful injection that when somebody overdoses, first responder, paramedic, police gives them a shot of this stuff and it brings them back to life. Sometimes multiple shots are required to bring a person and revive them. And then 2 weeks later, what happens? The addict goes back out, they overdose, they come back out, and they give them a couple more shots. They do it all over again. So where does Big Pharma come into play in that? Big Pharma does not hand this stuff out. They sell it. And it was mandated that it get put into every police cruiser, every first responder, every ambulance, every emergency medic has to carry this stuff. So how many hundreds of millions of this stuff did Big Pharma make money from correcting and covering up a problem that they themselves created to begin with? Do you see where FDA is not going to trample all over Big Pharma? They're making a shit ton of money covering up and making more product to do what they wanted to do to begin with. Which, if you look at this, it comes right back to the very same thing when they were talking about, and this is why I said it earlier, treatment strategies for the epidemic rise in teen use of e-cigarettes. Treatment strategies. Here comes Big Pharma all over again. They want to create something new to treat this false epidemic garbage that the FDA is doing. It's an unreal. It doesn't stop. It doesn't go away. But there's something else that I want to show you. Because we said, and we saw that they said 35 cases warrants further investigation. It warrants further looking into scientific study, right? 35. Did they do a study on opioids? I doubt it. Here's the one that I want to show you. 35 cases over 9 years. And they're worried about that. And they're worried about this teen epidemic. If you want to talk about numbers about something, how about this? Tide Pods, folks. Tide Pods. In 2017, there were 12,299 calls to Poison Control Center for Tide Pods. Kids eating Tide Pods. And I did the math and I added up from 2013 to 2017. there were 65,282 calls to the Poison Control Center for kids eating Tide Pods. Where's the Tide Pod epidemic? Hello, FDA. Are you doing anything about that? Maybe it's beyond their control. Congress doing anything about it? 12,000 a year? Okay. But check this out a little bit further down in that very same thing. Right down here. It says a couple things to keep in mind. First, while 12,000 poison control calls sounds like a lot, it's well within the range of calls for a lot of other common household products. In 2016, for instance, there were over 20,000 calls related to hand sanitizers, 17,000 calls for toothpaste exposure. Toothpaste exposure. That's FDA. Toothpaste, 17,000 in 1 year. Well, I don't remember hearing about a toothpaste epidemic, do you? Of course not. Why? Because it hurts a big company, that's why. 16,000 calls to the Poison Control Center for deodorant. Imagine that. Imagine some kid taking mom and dad's deodorant, spray or whatever, and ingesting it, or putting it in their mouth, or doing whatever the hell they're doing. And 13,000 calls to the Poison Control Center for mouthwash. But you don't hear any kind of epidemic crap from all of that. Why not? Because it hurts big companies. You see, I used to talk with a gentleman. I won't mention his name. Lives on the West Coast. Created a washing machine. A washing machine. Check this shit out. He created a washing machine that and it's patented, so I'll keep it to a simple kind of thing. But you have cartridges, for lack of better words, that you load into the washing machine. One contains detergent, one contains soap, one contains fabric softener. Load them in, turn it on. The machine automatically dispenses the correct amount of all ingredients and washes your clothes correctly. He shopped this to I don't know how many different manufacturers, major manufacturers of washing machines. Okay? They all turned him down. One of them finally had the balls to tell him why. It was just 3 years after Tide came out with their Tide Pods, and this was something that this gentleman was very, very concerned about. What was happening with Tide Pods. But this guy told him, said, look, the company that owns Tide has spent billions of dollars in marketing, billions of dollars getting their product to market. And that company is so big, they won't allow someone to purchase the patent for your washing machine because it would put them out of business. It would destroy their product. Now, tell me that is not just anything short of corporate greed. They could have eliminated, literally, this guy could have sold his patent and eliminated all of this, the poison control crap. 2017, he could have cut that number in half. Didn't happen because somebody was making money. And if you think for a minute that the FDA is not covering for big tobacco and big pharma for the same damn reason, we really need to have a very long, serious conversation. Because you're just not getting it. This was just about soap. And you know that they make a ton more money than anything else, okay? But here's another part. So we're looking at this, and we said in the 2016, out of all the 13,000 calls for Tide Pods only, 5,000 resulted in someone requiring treatment in a medical facility. 5,000. And out of that, 700 needed moderate or had a major risk to the individual's health. So 5,000 had to go to the hospital, and 700 were on the verge of dying or did die. Okay? Yeah, that's my cat. Say hi, Tiger. Look right up here. Hey, kid. So how many out of all those showed an epidemic? None. Zero. Zilch. None. None of them showed an epidemic whatsoever, and the FDA didn't care. They just didn't care. And again, they could change all of this, but they don't. Why? Because of taxation, because of big tobacco, because of big pharma. They're making a ton of money, and they don't want to give that money stream up. I see Mr. Bill Tarling in there. Bill, my apology for not being able to get to you and to see your post that I was having audio issues earlier. I had to come back this evening and yet talk about the things that were going on. There's so much that the FDA now is going to do to railroad all of us out of existence. And you're going to see, I would make a wager. Gottlieb's got one more day. How many of you think that Gottlieb's going to come out with one more piece of bullshit before he walks out the door? He's already done 8 in 4 days. This is just him with his name attached to it. 8 of them in the first 4 days. And he's got one more day to go. And I'm going to guess that he's probably going to just absolutely plow into and will receive the worst kind of garbage ever coming out from him. This is all the stuff that absolutely blew my mind earlier. I could not stomach it. It was so difficult. And then when I saw the audios and I couldn't figure out what had happened, why it was going on, I blew my stack. So the people, again, I'll apologize if you caught the earlier edition. It was riddled with a lot of anger and a lot of technical malfunction. Now, hopefully this one came across an awful lot better. I do have some good news. Honest to God, I have good news. For the first time in a while, I can tell you what the schedule is going to look like over the course of the next 3 weeks. Believe it or not. Next week, since we were talking about T21, I spoke with Lindsay Stroud a couple of days ago, and I said, hey, is there a chance that you can hit the show and we can talk about taxation, T21, flavor bans, the things that are going on? Because she's got this Excel spreadsheet that is just the spreadsheet from hell. It's gotten bigger, it's gotten longer, it's horrible. There are more states planning T21, and then you go back and you take a look at this Republican congressman who wants to T21 the entire nation, blanket, one swoop, screw you, you don't have any choice. Oh, but you can still vote for me, but you can't buy an alternative to cigarettes. No, we don't want that. But I still want you to vote for me. Bullshit. Anyhow, next week on the 11th, Lindsay Stroud is going to be joining me from the Heartland Institute, and we're going to talk about, like I said, taxes, T21, flavor bans, what's going on the national and on a state level. Tune in next week because she can explain this because it's her spreadsheet, but she can explain all the things that are going on and some of the horror stories that she has told me and things that she heard coming out of people's mouths is horrendous. Just horrendous. Now, on the 18th, Lindsay posted a picture of, it was Representative Jason Osborne from New Hampshire. She posted a picture of him talking, and it gave a direct quote underneath of it. And in the back of this picture, there were people that looked like they could really care less. And I made a comment about it, saying much the same thing. Do you know, honest to God, that representative took the time to come back and say The people in the background are staffers, and they're actually doing their job. I went, well, hell, I feel like an asshole. So I got in touch with him, and I said, would you come on the show and help educate me and other people like me in how to better approach a political body, lose some of the vehemence and the anger and the attitude, and help us do better? And he said, yes, he would be happy to. So on the 18th, we have from New Hampshire State Representative Jason Osborne. He's going to be joining the show. And I'm seriously looking forward to that. He's going to have a lot of good information. The last Thursday of the month, on the 25th, this one's been kind of in the making. I've had some people saying, you really need to get in touch with, so I did. On the 25th, we're going to have Shell Hamill out of Texas. And she has stores in various locations, as well as being part of SAFADA. So I know that Shell's going to have some information, and we're going to talk again more of things that are happening on a national level. And in fact, what they're trying to propose in Texas right now, a T21. So we've got a good couple weeks coming up, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I needed to come back and at least talk to people, leave a show for posterity, so to speak. Earlier was horrible. It has gone. For the people that watched it, you heard probably a lot of anger coming out of it. That show's gone. It's history. I don't even have a recording of it. It's gone. But I wanted to come back because people need to see what the FDA is doing and railroading. They're creating a fear-based narrative that is being picked up not only by news channels, but it's also being picked up, and you know it's going to be picked up by tobacco-free kids and all of the ANTS programs and all of the garbage. And that fear-mongering is going to go bigger and bigger and wider, and it has very little, if any, basis in fact. Nobody is taking the time to read through what the FDA has said. All they're saying is, here's an epidemic and kids are having seizures from this and that. And 35 reported cases from 2010 to 2019. That's it. 35. Meanwhile, 65,000 Tide Pod calls in the same amount of time. That's just Tide Pod. All right? That doesn't even cover all the other things that are serious in nature, that are killing teens, youngsters, everything. But the FDA doesn't want you to focus on that. They only want you to focus on what they are trying to narrative themselves into. Because take a look, here again, they said it, the news got a hold of it, the states are getting hold of it, and they are turning around and creating legislation about it. Flavor bans, we don't want this in our backyard. I think I read even somewhere earlier that they turn around and they want to try to throw Juul out of their own damn building. Really? It's a company, folks. They make money. They have a product. They have a device. I hate Juul. Hate's a very strong word. I dislike the company and what they are trying to do. Okay? But as a company, they saw a problem, they created a solution, and they're making a ton of money on it. That's the great American dream. It's just, unfortunately, they're very misguided. But this is what the FDA is doing. They're creating this narrative. It's being picked up, and when Gottlieb leaves at the end of the day tomorrow, all he's going to be doing is whistling while he's going home, because he did his job. He kickstarted this entire damn thing, and now he's quitting and leaving. Anyhow, folks, I appreciate you tuning in. Glad that we had a chance to reconnect for a few minutes. Ed, I know we brought this up once before. When did the FDA stop talking about 400,000 plus deaths every year due to tobacco-related illness? When did they stop talking about the kids should not be smoking? You don't hear that anymore. All you hear is about nicotine and e-cigarettes. Where did the FDA? They totally drove their crap straight off the side of the cliff. They did. And their recent announcements do nothing but prove that. We heard stories, but 23,000 comments are anecdotes. We're not even... I hope everybody has a great week and the rest of a weekend. I will catch up with you again next Thursday at our normal time, 7 p.m. Lindsay Stroud next week. And we'll have a much better show than we did this week. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend.